So this particular theme is wild dreams, Afro-futurism, and cosplay, right? This is the thematic piece for us for this weekend, and so we begin this evening starting to have some conversation. Now, I know there are some people in this room who know all about all three. Some of us just know about wild dreams, right? I don't understand what cosplay is, right? I live with someone who is fully engulfed, and I'm still asking questions. But these aren't necessarily the questions that we typically have in our faith spaces. And so we want to have those tonight. Last month, we did a conversation on Taoism, Christianity, and Buddhism, and holding all of that in our one person. In January, our conversation will be write the book, tell the story. I know many of us have stories within us, and we have said to ourselves and maybe someone else, I need to let this go. I need to release this. I need to write the book. So we're having a published author and one who directs many in their writing to be with us in January. And that retreat will come with a 6-month cohort of accountability. So that by the end of our 6 months, we have some words on paper, some proposals, some conversations to have with some publishers, right? We're going to write the book and birth it. Let it go. So tonight is all about wild dreams, Afro-futurism, and cosplay. And trying to let the people get in here, but we're going to get into it. I want to invite you after our conversation. If you've never been to Journey Houston and you'd like to take a tour through, check it out, because you're not staying the weekend, please, we'd love to do that. All right? All right, then let's get started. Oh, before we do, Lauren Ashley Simmons is in the room, and so she is here. She is a Democrat for State Rep District 146. Stand up, wave to the people. Okay. So she's here. She's here just to be in conversation and community with the rest of us. And so welcome. We're glad that you are here. Mm-hmm. So let's do it. Our goal tonight is to explore faith and spirituality through the unique lens of Black nerd culture, to widen the welcome on diverse spiritual perspectives. All right? So Dr. Sharde Chapman, could you start us off in this conversation by sharing an overview of your particular research interests and how they connect faith and spirituality with Black nerd culture?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. So I have a PhD in African American religion that I got from Rice, so I did my studies here in Houston. The topic of my dissertation was to think through non-traditional religious spaces, with my object of study being Black nerd conventions, specifically BlurredCon, which is a Black nerd Comic-Con that was started in the DC area, and it's going on its 6th year now. And I started going in 2019 in its 3rd year. So I study why and where Black people are being religious. For me, that's not always in the church space, because we know that many people have fraught relationships at best with the church, Black church, church writ large, religion in general, pick your poison. But that doesn't mean that religiosity, spirituality is not in us. And if we're not engaging in it in a specific institution or a space like this, where is it happening? And for me, that is sometimes in things like brunch with my girlfriends, right? That we get to talking about life and identity and things like that, and it becomes a sort of container that is sacred, that is spiritual. So I turned that to something like BlurredCon, which, you know, if you identify as a Black nerd, that means you stand as a marginal identity in 2 places, broader culture as well as Black culture, because Black folks ain't nerdy. And we know that's not true, but we're treated that way, right? And so what I've found is that through things like Afro-futurism, through things like cosplay, Black nerds in specific are exploring how to be radically themselves, how to be authentically themselves, how to heal the wounds that are attached to things like marginalization from your own folks, because sometimes it be your own people, right? And so through that, I'm asking the question, what are we doing to make ourselves more whole? And so that's where we get at the spirituality piece in something like nerd culture, because it's just merely one more way that we say, how do I exist in this body, in this time that is authentic to me and that connects me to something beyond myself? And sometimes that's community, sometimes that's spirit, sometimes that's just a higher sense of self, right? And so I look at, what it means to participate in a fandom, to find meaning in things like anime or books or comic books, because those things are all also deeply important in like lifelong interests of my own and my parents and things like that. So how do we all find our spot with all the things? And maybe it's not Jesus. Maybe it's Jesus through, Harry Potter, because that's a salvific figure. Maybe it's Jesus through something like Naruto, where there is a hero's journey. But my question is, how are we each on our own hero's journey in that way?
I feel like snapping already. Right? How are we all on our own hero's journey? Because sometimes it be your own people. Did you all hear her say that? Sometimes it be your own. Byron Canady.
That's me.
Educator and CEO of Gulf Coast Cosmos Comics. How do you see the intersection between faith, spirituality, and Black nerd culture?
For myself, first, thank you for having me. For myself, creating a space like a comic book shop is it's essentially creating the church for those individuals seeking a space to commune with their own tribe. And a little brag here, being the only Black-owned comic book shop in the state of Texas means that there are many people who come through the shop, either out of curiosity or because they know where they're about to go get their life. And for me, having this space to commune, to see and be seen, and to have your wild dreams nurtured through story, through comic books, through manga, through cosplay, and to speak a language that everybody in that space speaks is incredibly important.
Yeah, incredibly affirming.
Yes.
To be in a space where folks speak your language and you are seen and affirmed authentically for who you are, right? And for what your interests are. You don't have to explain it, right? Isn't it a beautiful thing to not have to explain your interest and your love to the people, but to be in that kind of space? And I just want to say kudos for being the only Black comic store owner in the state of Texas. He said that kind of quickly, right? But I really want us to hear that and applaud that and realize that we need those spaces also. And that space is a safe space for these kind of conversations. I love it. I'm excited. I'm good already. Okay. But this is our special guest. We didn't advertise that he was coming because you all probably would have to be outside trying to peek in the door. But we are really happy to have you, John Henry, as a film and television actor. Do you all, anybody know? Well, what you know, Byron?
That's Papa Labor.
Yes. A pediatric nurse specializing in neonatology and pediatric ER at Texas Children's Hospital and Marine, because we can be many things at the same time. How do you see the intersection between faith, spirituality, and Black nerd culture?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And thank you for providing this type of space for people. Because most of us don't know where to go and don't even seek out most of this. So to be able to have someone like these esteemed people and I've been to the comic book shop, so you got to go. I was blown away the first time I went. Stephanie brought me, and I was just, I couldn't. I started buying stuff up and realized I didn't have the money to buy everything I wanted. but no, beautiful space. You got to go visit it. I started off by, when I heard this term, know thyself. If you don't know yourself, then you can't see yourself in everything. So once I understood what those words mean, and then understood that those words are on the pyramid. So that's probably the first nerd space you're going to find. They're still trying to figure out how we made those pyramids in a mathematical sense. They can't even replicate a building like that now today without building a building without mortar. Those buildings, those bricks were cut mathematically precisely and lay there where they're still laying there now. But that's a whole nother story. So, and me seeing myself in everything, because just like when you take a picture, we all take a picture, and once we see the picture, we're looking for ourselves first. We're not looking for the other person. Then we're like, oh, that's Doc, there's him, but we're looking for ourselves first. And 99% of the time, we're cut out and we don't see ourselves. So then we feel we're not validated. So we can watch something like the Black Panther movie and not understand that that's us and everything in there. It was spiritual, but it's also technology. Yes. I happen to be blessed to be in Fantastic Four. And Stan Lee came, the last Fantastic Four, but Michael B. Jordan and all the rest of them, the one that went bad. Because they announced, well, it went bad, and we were all talking about it on set. The second they announced that Michael B. Jordan was going to be Johnny, was going to be Flame On, right? And the whole internet went crazy. And there were even people on set that said, well, he's supposed to be white. And I was like, what? And I was like, it's a comic book character. It was and I happened to ask Stan Lee when he was there, I was like, what was your, he said, man, I don't care what it is. I just want the story to get out. So then I took it further and asked him about Black Panther. I said, I know people say it wasn't based on Black Panther. He said, yes, it was. It was based on the Black Panthers. Not everything, but it was, I got all the idea from the Black, and this man told me this to my face. And I'm the type of person, when I meet you, I got a question for you. Right, Doc? So I asked him that. So, because I saw myself in it. So if you don't see yourself in it, whatever it is, then how are you going to relate to it? And this is the most important part. Once I see myself in it, can I verbalize what I am in this and what exactly where am I at in that particular thing? Or even if I'm the foundation, and 99% of the time, if you look like us, we are the foundation for this, for everything, all the cultures, not just futurism. So my safe space is 196,940,000 square miles. That's the whole. Right. That's the whole world.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna try to control myself up here because I'm supposed to just ask the questions, not snap my fingers. But isn't this a good conversation, right? To be able to even to have the conversation that you had on set, right? To question some of the things that we see and to get those kinds of answers that allow us to see ourselves. What's the root of this thing? What's this connected to? It looks familiar, feels familiar to me. What is the basis? And to be able to get those kinds of answers. Yeah, this is cool. Dr. Chapman, could you expand on the concept of Black cosplay and the utility of Afro-futurism, especially for spiritual practices?
Okay, so, boom, go with me. Picture it, Sicily, 1922. Now, cosplay is literally short for costume play. It originated in Japan, so a lot of people know, if you know about Harajuku and the cultures that come out of Japan, cosplay has always been a thing. Literally, it's just people dressing like their favorite characters. People just did it on Halloween. But there are communities of people that do it in everyday life, myself included, right? And so what cosplayers typically do, that I found through my research is they dress as characters that they identify with. That is the sort of special thing about cosplay. So a lot of people, when they cosplay, they either have their go-to characters, or they experiment with characters that they call kin. Like they feel close relationship to that character. And they sometimes perfect it. Sometimes it's closet cosplay, which means regular clothes, but you can tell the character that they're playing. And some people go all out. They make weapons, they make helmets. I am not there yet because it gets expensive. Like, people sew their outfits. It's a really big deal. And so this, as a sort of spiritual practice, to me, is the ability to, again, imagine oneself as somebody that has gone through something you identify with. So, for example, one of my favorite characters to cosplay is Kakashi from Naruto. I do a lot of gender bending in my costume. Thank you. You feel me? Right. So I identify with Kakashi, one, because he's an avid reader of smut, and I like that. But also, he is a teacher. He's an educator who is deeply involved in the lives of his students, teaches them lessons they don't realize they're learning, and sees the potential in them beyond what they see in themselves. But also, he's the kind of leader that can lead but not make a big stink. Like, he was one of the most powerful shinobi in the Hidden Leaf Village. But he portrayed himself as a little bit of a screw up. Like, he was very hands off with things, and he was just like, I guess I'll go over there. But then he goes over there and hands everybody hands. Like, he deals them out like cards, right? He's collecting W's like Pokemon cards, right? So, and he's one of my favorite characters because I am an educator. I love the students that are problem children because they usually just need a little bit more care and concern. And most people won't take the time. But I'll take the time. But also, again, he's real low key, and I really identify with that. So when I cosplay as Kakashi, that is something I deeply connect to his story. Some of the things he experiences, and also some of the modalities in which he educates his students, right? So that is what a lot of cosplayers do, even Black cosplayers. And to your point, what we see with Black cosplay in particular is a lot of people going, well, that character's not Black, right? There was a whole viral moment that happened on TikTok in 2021 about Black cosplay, because Black cosplayers were using hashtags and stuff to draw attention to the artistry of Black people in cosplay, because you don't see it very often. When you look at sort of aesthetically and photographically, most cosplayers you see are not Black. They are still overwhelmingly white, right? Not even totally Asian. Lots of white people, right? And so for Black people to take on these characters, there has to be a lot more consideration to the actual ways in which you do it, because we have to account for not only skin color, different body types, hair, the whole bit, right? And so lots of Black cosplayers have this extreme level of creativity with how they interpret these characters, and they still come up against the typical thing that a lot of Black people come up against. Well, Black people don't do that. And Black nerds been hearing that all of our lives. Are you watching anime? Black people don't do that. That's real nerdy. You reading manga, like Japanese cartoons? Listen, these have deep storylines. These are complex things. This is not Rugrats, right? And even Rugrats had complex storylines. So the inability of to use your imagination to say you can interpret deep things in something very simple is part of the ability to see oneself, because it doesn't always have to be talking head up here. We're talking about things that are deeply experiential and deeply embodied. And Black folks doing cosplay is just one more way of that happening, because when somebody sees you and they see you in your cosplay, they're like, yo, that's dope. That, one, affirms that you did something right. Two, that makes you feel very seen. And three, it makes you know, yes, I'm in a place where I am safe, where I'm understood, even if for a moment. And that makes me feel a little bit more at ease in the world, even if it's momentary. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, yes. Byron, see, you are ready to get going. But can you give us an experience similar to what Sharde is speaking of, where you've noticed that with people who come into your comic store? You know, an example of where someone has seen themselves, or how that does it look like when people, and I'm asking because last year we did Santa and we had a black Santa Claus and the children came around the corner like, oh my God, a black Santa, right? So when people come into your comic store, can you give us an example of what that experience is like?
That's every day, but I will give you two.
Okay.
Like, and they connect so beautifully. It'll. Everybody got tissue.
Oh.
You got paper towels, tissue, because it's about to happen. So when I first opened the shop, the whole purpose of the shop, the intentionality of the space, as I said in my introduction, is for Black people and people of color, for LGBT, for women to come into the space where they have typically been marginalized, to come into a new space where they are seen. And I said this to you when you came into the shop, that if you can't pick up 2 to 3 items in my shop that reflect you, and essentially you, unapologetically you, then I'm not doing my job. So when I first opened the year 1 of the comic book store, we feature 80 to 90% of the comics and everything that's in the shop are Black-led characters or created by Black writers, Black artists, Black publications, et cetera, et cetera. So, and this was on Juneteenth, as a matter of fact, last year on 2 years ago on Juneteenth. Little girl comes into the shop with her dad, and she comes into the shop, and she's so cute. She's about like 3-4 years old, and she's got like Afro puffs, and she is adorable. And she comes into the shop, and I have like comics and graphic novels on display for people to see and pick up. So as she's in the shop, and she's like looking at all the books, and she sees one, and she points to it, and it's a graphic novel of Moon Girl. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is it's a popular like comic book character. She's
now a cartoon on Disney.
Now a cartoon on Disney. She's genius levels superhero. She's a girl from Lower East Side, New York, but she is so smart and intelligent. In Marvel Comics, she is literally a genius level superhero. So this little girl, she looks up and she sees it and she points to it and she turns to her dad and she says, me. We could have shut the shop down that day because that was like, yep, that's the point. Yes, that's the point. So full circle moment. This past Sunday, we've been in operations. We've been in business for 3 years now. Same character, Moon Girl. A customer rents out the space, rents out the comic book shop for their daughter's birthday party. Different girl, and rents out the shop for the birthday party. Oh, okay, cool. So we do that. So getting with the parents to go over, well, what's the theme, what are the colors, blah blah blah, and they say, and by the way, she wants to do Moon Girl for the event. Can you do that? Yes. Yeah. So we get everything ready, and we have like the bags, the party bags, and all this stuff for the girls for the birthday party, and special surprise, we get a birthday cake made for her with Moon Girl on the cake. They bring out the cake at the end of the party to, do the happy birthday. And she like runs up to the cake, and she's in cosplay, by the way, as Moon Girl. And she has a blow up like big red dinosaur. It is so stinking cute. There are pictures on Instagram. Love it. She sees the cake and she starts crying. And she's like, thank you. Not to me, but to her parents. But she's like, thank you. It's that. It's those instances in which you're validated. And starting up here, I wish as a kid I'd had a space, to have this type of energy and validation. But to make sure that kids nowadays have that, that's job number one. That's priority number one.
That's awesome. That is awesome. John, let's talk American Horror Story. How did your experience working on the set of American Horror Story influence your understanding of acting and spirituality?
Interesting. Well, one, we shot that. Well, that was the season Coven. So I was on 2 seasons, Coven, and then the next season I was on what was that circus? It'll come to me anyway. But you took me to a spot that I didn't think that was gonna come up. But so American Horror Story Coven was shot in New Orleans. So we already know the lure of New Orleans, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. But that house and everything is real, but we didn't shoot at that house. We shot it. The house is a replica at the studio, running water, the whole 9 yards, everything. But we did shoot at different areas that we went to, and that particular American Horror Story had to do a lot with spirituality, by the way. And so it just, and then I don't know if you know New Orleans or whatever, but the cemeteries are all on top, right? So my very first scene, I went to American Horror Story for one character and wound up becoming another character. So I went there and as a grave digger, but actually I went there for a feature as a trumpet player at a graveyard. But when I was there, they was like, "Oh, well, John, we have this other part coming up. They just wrote it last night. Do you want to audition for it?" And the reason why I even got the audition is because when they called me, they asked me, did I have a trumpet? And I was like, yeah, I got a trumpet. I didn't have no trumpet. And so when I got there, she was like, well, since you got that trumpet, there's another part. So do you want to go for that? I'm like, yeah. And to be honest, I had never auditioned or anything ever in my life. But not for that. I've been auditioning all my life, but all my energy was in that. Long story short, I got the part. It was like, when I walked into the room, there was like 30 other brothers in there. And I was like, this is mine. I claimed it before I wind up getting it. But anyway, fast forward, we're shooting in the graveyard, in the cemetery. So there's people all around, just everywhere, right? But then I'm looking at all these. I mean, this is the actual graveyard. There wasn't no fake graveyard. So we're in the middle, and so I'm looking at it, and it made me start thinking about the spirituality aspect of all that, right? And it was an all-day shoot in there. And then, you do second line. Second line, they shot after that later. But it just really made me realize that, this entire series that we're doing and everything we're doing, it's based on my spirituality. Period. They're actually pulling from me and us. The faces may not, on the Angela Bassett's probably on them, and then Precious. Those two, after that, everybody else on there is Caucasian, which I'm not saying anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, but in New Orleans, and you're talking about that, that's our city, whether you realize it or not. It's our city. The entire aspect of it, and even covering with the witches, because Angela Bassett plays the black witch who's in charge of all the black witches, which she has the most power than all of them, to be honest, because she's connected with Papa Legba, which is a character that I played, and Papa Legba is actually the person that you have to meet before you cross over into the next round. He is the gatekeeper. So getting ready for that part, I Googled and researched everything about Papa Legba and realized that he is the French aspect of that. Papa Midnight, if you've seen Constantine, is its counterpart. That's the Spanish aspect. So then I had to get myself ready for a French accent, a Louisiana accent, which that's where my parents were from. And, you know, just that whole thing. And so when I started realizing that with Papa Legba, before you even go to the next level, you have to bring him gifts. You know what I'm saying? In the American Horror Story, she brings him cocaine. You know, I did the part with the cocaine, but that's not what you bring Papa Legba. You know what I'm saying? It just shows you how they mess with. So you have to bring them food and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? They did show, cigars and stuff. Rum. They did. I was just going to say they do show the rum and this and that. But even that has a spiritual aspect of it. It's not just to be getting drunk or this and that. If you actually do the actual research. And when I was researching, I was like, oh, I knew, but I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? I had an understanding of it. You don't really realize until you stop and start doing the research of how this is really our soul. This is us. Every bit of this is us, but they've taken it and turned it to where we're copying them who's copying us. So we think but we're really copying ourselves. They done changed it to make us think we're copying them, but they copied us and we're copying them. So, you know, let's just go straight to the point. And then I just kind of want to deviate just for 2 seconds. Okay. So, speaking of comic books and everything else, you know, Blade is the character that saved Marvel, right? Right? And it cosplayed the whole night. If it wouldn't have been for Wesley Snipes, Marvel was done. And all through entertainment, even if you go back into the 60s, when quote unquote black exploitation movies were done. Until Bill Cosby and Mario Van Peebles dad and all started making these movies, these so-called black exploitation, the movie industry was done. So we've always saved this industry, the whole 9 yards. And it's always been based on our own stories of oppression. I mean, most of the movies in the 60s were about the man, right? We were always fighting the man. And we know who the man was in the movies, the cop, the city councilman, the this and that, and this and that. So it's always been that we, for some reason, you know, and you have to be taught this, being in this system, to look for yourself. You know what I'm saying? I've always been taught to look for myself. There's nothing bigger than myself. But there's enough room for myself to be with your big self in here too. It's enough air.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to suck your air up or your air up, but I'm not going to minimize me. And you shouldn't minimize yourself. And that's where I believe a lot of times we don't get the full extent of what we're going through, because for some reason we feel when we get to the table, well, we didn't bring a fork or a knife we made the table. We made the house.
Wow. So we're going to open this up so that you can ask some questions, but I want to ask one last question, and I'm going to ask it of you, Sharde, but John and Byron, feel free after she answers to add to this. You've talked about the spaces that are created in academia, in a comic store, on a movie set, about our identity. You talked a lot about spirituality. You talked about graveyards and cosplay and souls and spirit. And some would say these things are demonic, right? Some would say that why are we even having this conversation? And so I want to have that be our last piece, because I know that you'll talk about that in your retreat that's coming up over, I know that'll be part of what you all deal with. But let's not leave this space without acknowledging that many are finding their safe place there because they can't be fully in that place and feel fully comfortable in the church, right? So I may have to hide some of this, or I can't bring my full self right? I can't be all of who I am, which from my perspective is nonsense. But will you explore that with us?
Okay, this could be long. I'm going to try to make this as succinct as possible. So, one, we have to sort of come to grips with the fact that, and I'm speaking specifically of the United States. The United States is a fundamentalist Christian country. It's very steeped in Western Christianity, right? When enslaved Africans were imported here, they learned Western Christianity. Not to say that Christianity had not already been in Africa, because it had. It had been in Africa as early as the 3rd century, right? So we can start there. But because of this specific brand of Christianity that is also steeped very much in things like patriarchy, taken up by capitalism, right? There are ways in which it is used, and we know this, to oppress, marginalize, and keep certain demographics of people underfoot. Not just Black people, but capitalism, white supremacy, and colonization/imperialism, they all go together real bad, right? They are essentially, they feed off of one another. And so how do we keep the people in line? Well, one, you tell them that there is a big God and there is a hell for them to go to. And that if you don't do certain things, like listen to the Pope, listen to the king, listen to your pastor, like you're going to go to hell. If you dress a certain way, you're going to go to hell. Like it's a lot of fear mongering of things that aren't actually in the Bible, right? The sort of conception of hell that we sort of have been fed doesn't actually exist in the Bible, right? Things like the rapture, that is a product of the 1950s. And these are conversations that we don't frequently have in the church. And so because of that, you know, we fear things like witchcraft, we fear things like crystals, we fear things like incense, but those things existed in the Bible, right? And so if we're going specifically off of what's in the biblical text, all of those things existed. But mostly, if we, at least from my perspective as a scholar, when I look at the Bible, I'm also clergy. This is my church. So I see the Bible as a historical book, right? Yes, it sort of grounds my own sense of spirituality and my religiosity. It gives me the language to sort of navigate. But at the end of the day, it is a historical book that reflects the lives of historicized people from a specific place in the globe at a specific time with specific values. And the rest of us have interpreted it in various ways to suit our needs. Christianity became what it is from being a cult. So they were pagans, like people are pagans now. But what happened? The Emperor Constantine said, hey, we need to get everybody together. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this Christianity and we're going to put some of these pagan holidays with it. Because I had a vision of the Son of God and us riding into victory in war. And we're going to make us a state religion. And that's how you get the start of Christianity, right? And so what that means for us is because Christianity has changed and been used and weaponized in such a way, I'm not saying that Christianity in and of itself is bad, but we have to be very realistic about the history of our faith, right? And we're all still interpreting it. But my people, somebody survived the transatlantic slave trade for me to get here, and my people are Southern. Right? But they're also hoodoo practitioners, which I didn't know, because most hoodoo practitioners are good church-going folks that would never tell you that they are turning tricks in their kitchen because somebody was talking about them and they caught wind of it. But, and Byron and I were just talking about this, if you think about your grandmother, your great-grandmother, an aunt, an uncle, something like that, you could probably think of some strange things they had in their house or some strange practices that they had that are likely hoodoo. And these were also Christian people. And so I think the demonic part of it is how people interpret your practice. And so we're afraid because people are afraid of going to hell. But if we are understanding this book and even the trajectory of the religion as something that is historically placed, we're going to have to call into question what these things mean. And so by doing that, we realize that a lot of the things that we feel like are bad or demonic actually do exist. They've been there. And more importantly, at least for in the case of Black folk in particular, these magical practices were the things that empowered us in the face of the absurdity of oppression. This was us taking back our power, doing the things we knew to do because they were retentions. If you ever caught the Holy Ghost, that sounds very much like a ring shout to me. That sounds very much like spirit possession to me. But why is it okay to catch the Holy Ghost but not get mounted by the Spirit when we've been doing this for centuries? And so I think as people connect more with the cultural aspect of their practice, you have to call into question, well, what if Christianity has been proffered to us as a means of control? What parts of it can we look at critically and say this has value, while also saying there are some things that are actually inherently evil about how Christianity has been given to the people? And so I think because of that, it makes it hard for people to feel like they can be themselves because they're very afraid of being marginalized and ostracized. And if you're
you said at the beginning, it'd be your own people.
It'd be your own people. Right? Like at this point, who I am right now would not have flown in the church I grew up in. I got my knees out, I'm tattooed, I got jewelry in my face. Usually I'm a preacher. My home church still does not ordain women. Right? Let alone one that wears gold fangs when they preach. Right? But at some point, what they were offering did not fit who I was. And so we often have to decide, is it worth it to seek out authentic existence or to be accepted? But now we have a lot more open to us where we can find both of those things together. And now our churches have to figure out how to remain relevant, because you can't keep telling people they're going to go to hell for who they love. You can't keep telling people they're going to go to hell because they don't wear a slip or, whatever the case may be. You can't say come as you are and then be judgy. Those two things don't go together. Right. So it's either come as you are or you got to be whatever holiness is. But what if holiness is actually the pursuit of authentically living as one should, as one feels led to? And that's the thing that connects us not only to God, but makes us ethically more moral agents. What if that is the thing that makes us be able to be in community with one another? Because we are trying to connect with our authenticity. So, and as Reverend Vanessa says, the divine in me has to bow to the divine in you, because real recognizes real. Yes. And if I'm being real with myself, then you being real with yourself shouldn't give me heartburn.
Mm-hmm. The divine in
I can't follow up with that.
You don't want to help with that? You don't want to help with that?
She made me think of something.
All right.
There's a couple of things that came to mind when she said that. And, the number one thing that came to mind was truth. And a lot of us don't, this is something I'm really big on. And when I meet people, I try to leave them with something. The one thing I like to leave them with is, we really don't know what words mean in the Black community. We say a lot of words and don't understand what these words mean. I mean, even because we all have our own language in our head. What you say is, and I said this last time, everyone has an idea. You say man, you say the word man. Everyone in here got a different understanding of a man. I'm in the medical field. I could be thinking about a man dying. You could be thinking about teaching a man. You could be thinking about a man in a comic book. You could be thinking about a spiritual man. We all have that. So we all have to get to the point where the foundation we're working on comes from. We're on the same page. In other words, we all understand what we're trying to say, and the only way you can get there is with truth. And truth stands alone. A lot of times we don't like to hear the truth. You know what I'm saying? But we still got to take it. A little salt, a little sugar, whatever it is. But The thing that I believe we have to get to is to the point to where what is it and how much of it that we really want, how much work are we going to put in to ourselves in order to get to this? Because I believe everyone, the truth, it comes to you sooner or later. Why am I here? What am I, is this all everything is about? Some of us go to the point to where, I'll do it tomorrow. Some of us going to scrape a little bit underneath. Very few of us actually do some real studying, you know. And I'm not saying there's anybody in here because, you know, you could have been anywhere you wanted to at this time, but you decided to come here. So evidently you're a different type of people. Evidently you know the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the critical thinking aspect. And that's really what we have to be able to do to ourselves, to our children, and on. So what you made me think of when you said it is, one, where are our think tanks as black people? Where, this is the closest thing to a think tank that I've been to since I've been in Houston. We have to look, where are we going to be at in 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 300 years from now? Everyone else plans for 300. The Chinese are planning for 300 years from now. Where is our plan for the next 25 years, for 300 years? Where's the church plan? Where's the government plan? Yeah, where's my individual plan for my children and great-great-grandchildren 300 years from now? Are we thinking in the future? Just because I may not physically be here, my great-grandfather, who had 60 acres of land stolen from him in Louisiana, is not here, but he is here. He's here through me, if I'm saying it again. So how are we going to be remembered? How are we going to set this up for someone 60 years from now, 100 years from now, to be able to do everything you just said and to see themselves truly the way we need to see ourselves and still be whole? Because it's no need for us to leave here and in 5 years from now, we're saying the same thing you're saying. Hell, 365 days from now saying the same thing. Where's the change? But change, we already know, has to start where? Within ourselves first. So how are we going to actually, because what you made me think of is that, okay, you identified the problem, right? You identified the problem, okay? So I was taught, if you're intelligent enough to see a problem, you should be intelligent enough to what? Formulate a solution, okay? So now, we're going to formulate a solution, okay? Now, what are we going to do about that solution? Who are we going to do with it? And when are we going to implement it? Huh? Because just to talk about it, you know, I enjoy coming and talking. You know me, I talk forever. But I'm also, faith without works is dead. It's somewhere in the Bible. Let's say something. Yeah, that's what I thought. I read it 1 or 2 pages. Faith without works is dead. So, I ain't for all that talking. I mean, I love to talk. I love to, I can pontificate with anybody. That's fine. I'll cut a minnow, next thing you know, it's bigger, it's Moby Dick I got. But that's not what's going to take us into the next 50 years. I mean, do we even know what the church looks like in 50 years? Do we know what spirituality looks like in 50 years? Have anybody even thought of that? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, yeah. But okay, so I'll give you a minute of me. Yeah, but I'm just saying, but how many people even think that?
I say to us all the time that our breath, spirit is as
Absolutely.
Close as our breath. It
Absolutely.
is the same God that hovered over the chaos in the beginning. No. The same God who hovered over the beginning, who now flows through us.
Absolutely.
Right? It is that same spirit. I want to yield the floor to you. We'll take a couple of questions, and then what we'll do is we're going to go over into our dining room where we can continue conversation.
My name is Mouton Bazil. My real question is, with this world we're living in now, with this cosplay, it is a real thin line between self-discovery and self-delusion. What can we do to keep it from being, because, delusion will spread a lot faster than discovery. Is it easy to chase a dream, a pipe dream, than it is to put in the work to live a real life? Because this real life is work. It's a new way of thinking.
I really want to hear what you got to say on this.
Yeah. So what can we do with with the way things are being programmed in us, even in the cosplay world? If you look at the cosplay world, it's 85% sexualized and 15% quote unquote wholesome. Not everyone is LeVar Burton's daughter out there playing a fairy, And what can we do because these images are everywhere. My son looks at YouTube shorts, and I'm looking at things that are way inappropriate for an 8-year-old. But it's cosplay, Dad. It's just fun. No, it's not fun. It's people subliminally putting ideas into your head that are going to destroy you spiritually as well as mentally.
Yeah.
And so what can we do right now in our own little communities? Because I'm not trying to conquer the world before I conquer fix home.
One, is it delusion or is it making room for imagination? Is escapism really that bad, or does some forms of escaping the harsh realities that you're existing allow you space for imagining, allow you space for conceiving the potential possibilities at your disposal? I think it depends on how you look at the products and the tools. Now, when it comes to the sort of widespread sexualization of things, one, I think that is part and parcel of media, right? That is a bigger sort of institution that pushes certain stories, certain narratives, certain messaging, and that is something that is very real. I probably would not necessarily agree with you that most cosplay is sexualized. Is there a lot of sexualization in cosplay? Of course. But, there's a lot of sexualization in cartoons, right? In books, in all kinds of things. And so I think it is, one, our responsibility to, again, deeply interrogate the thing. Should you be watching what your children expose themselves to as far as things like cosplay goes? Of course. That is your due diligence as the parent, as the authority figure. That is also your due diligence to yourself. What things do you ingest that could foreclose on your soul? That's something that we all have to answer for ourselves, right? But I think that what we call delusion is not always delusion. I think a lot of times we, especially us in here, us Black folks, we have been so inundated with seriousness, with gravity, with the absurdities of life, with the fact that, we have been oppressed, we lose the essence of play, right? That there is possibility through imagination, which is what we get at with something like Afro-futurism. It invites us to see ourselves in these vast places where up until 20, maybe 30 years ago, we had not seen ourselves, right? Nichelle Nichols was the first Black woman in sci-fi on television, right? That opened up a lot of doors. But she also had to make certain decisions, like not, exposing herself in certain ways. She also had to, bear on her back what it meant to be in that position. That is heavy. And maybe that took some of the joy out of the work. So I would say that it is on us to, one, as one of my mentors would say, we have to engage in the things that our souls must have. But I also think it is important for us to not always take things so seriously, because our freedom and our liberation, yes, it is tied to doing the work and putting in the effort. But what if our liberation and our resistance is in joy? What if it is in play? What if it is in saying, it's too hard out there, so maybe I take the day off? What if it is in rest, right? And so I think we must deeply question what it means for us to do the work. Yeah. And maybe it's not all serious. Maybe we have to be creative. Maybe we have to leave room for possibilities.
Right. Maybe there's some joy.
Maybe there is joy. Maybe there is laughter. Maybe there is whimsy.
Right.
So, I mean, and I say this not only as an academic, but I'm also a photographer. I'm also a cosplay photographer. I'm also a boudoir photographer. So what if somebody taking pictures that people deem sexy is a way for them to heal?
Question.
Thought I kind of want to tease the room with this question. How do we feel about the opposite? And is Afrofuturism just for us, or is it for a community larger than us?
Great question.
Yay.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. So, as a self-proclaimed Afrofuturist, I would dare say that Afrofuturism is for the Black folk, primarily. It is for the Black people, and it is a means of affirming ourselves in a place that hasn't even been thought of yet, the future. So when we're talking about Afrofuturism, and to your point earlier about, where are we going to be in the next, 20, 30, 100, 300 years, Afrofuturism answers that question. We're going to be where we at. We're going to be here. That plain and simple. So with Afrofuturism, we have three areas of concentration with Afrofuturism: literary works, whether that be traditional books, comic books, graphic novels, manga, etc., and we have film and television, and we have music. And in those three areas of concentration, Afrofuturism answers that question of who we are and where we are going to be. And the one thing that I find very comforting about Afrofuturism, when you come into the shop, there's many, many books. When we talk about, in my shop, when we talk about sci-fi, I also add Afrofuturism. So I say we have sci-fi / Afrofuturism and collections like Kindred. Anything by Octavia Butler has been adapted into a comic book or graphic novel. And then there are also some original works like, I would dare say, Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. Even though it's like set in the past, Harriet Tubman was an Afrofuturist, whether we want to admit it or not. Because she had premonitions. She saw things in the future. And right, exactly. And to have this type of space, Afrofuturism, for us, by us, which was initially the term was coined by a white man, but we were already doing it. So the term was coined by this individual, asking the question, just in general, of where are the Black folk in the future? This white man asked that question, and we were there already answering the question. We're here. Regarding cosplay.
I would say, to add to this, I think what Afrofuturism does as a Black cultural product, like many Black cultural products, is it gives us something of our own. But I think at its best, and everything has its challenges, right? Like Afrofuturism still does not actually have a category. Right. It literally is a catch-all for things.
Right.
But what it does is at least invites us, but not just Black folks, but any marginalized identity, to say, where are we in the future? Because Afrofuturism comes up as a terminology to address that there was erasure of Black folks, especially in science fiction and in fantasy. When you look at high fantasy and science fiction, it's still overwhelmingly white, right? And so when we're talking about when Samuel Delany and Octavia Butler are writing, they are the only ones writing at the time addressing the fact that sci-fi movies, sci-fi books, if Black people are there, they are codified into aliens, zombies, the enemy, something that has to be eradicated. The big bad, whatever that is. And so Afrofuturism, just like sci-fi and fantasy writers have been doing, at least for the last 3 decades, is to say, hold your mule. I don't know what you thought this was, but Black people gonna be here, right? Black people in dystopian society, we're gonna be there too. You're not gonna get rid of us that easily. Like, chill. And so they continue to interrogate, what does it look like for us to take mermaids, which, what is her name, River Solomon does, and take mermaids and say, what if mermaids are actually the dead Africans that jumped off of the boat? And then what? So again, it opens up these possibilities to say, hey, not only have we been here, but we're going to be here. And when it comes to sort of cosplay, I think, and these are just my thoughts, you know, the PhD don't mean anything. I'm a person with opinions. That's all this is. And so I think that when it comes to cosplay, we, just like everybody else, we find characters we like. And so to be able to take on that person even for a little while, that for some people adds confidence. And when you're constantly beat down for who you are, and you can put on an armor of somebody else's life experiences to put forth with your own and say, that person mattered, I matter too, that's big. That's deep work that people are doing, right? For some people, it is just putting on a costume. But for some people, it is being able to connect in ways that fly in the face of people and systems and institutions telling them that they are not enough, that they do not have dignity, that they are not human. That's something deeply ingrained in the Black experience. We know that, but not just us. All marginalized peoples get that.
So I just want to add one thing. So it's safe to say that if we don't control the narrative, someone else will.
Always.
So we have to control our own narrative.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We are in Bethel Church, United Church of Christ. Our motto is, whomever you are and wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. That is a wildly inclusive statement, and we mean it. And that is why we can have a conversation here that allows for many voices to be heard. Because if we are radically welcoming, then we have to be radically open to hearing different points of view. So whomever you are, I'll change from being Journey HTX right here and be Reverend Vanessa. You are welcome here. And we have service at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Okay. The other thing is that Journey Journey Houston, Journey Conference and Retreat Center, Journey HTX is a separate 501c3 organization that inhabits these grounds, these beautiful grounds, this beautiful space where many folk have come before us and deposited some stuff here. And you probably felt it when you walked into the grounds. You probably felt some peace, probably felt a little joy, probably felt a little goodness, right? You are welcome here on these grounds as well. You've passed them many times and didn't know what was behind here. Well, we are creating space for community. We're creating space for us to have rest, space for us to have joy. Maybe you can get a little, I looked over if somebody was saying something, I thought we need a little laughter yoga in here because we're getting a little too serious. We need to learn how to laugh. But this is a place where you can come and be a part of the conversations we have on our Thursday nights, might move into Friday nights, but you can also be a part of the retreats that we have that are based on particular themes. As I mentioned before, a lot of you got here, next in January, the theme will be on writing your book, telling your story. And so if there is a story inside of you that needs to be birthed, we invite you here in January to be a part of not only that conversation and that weekend of writing, but to join a 6-month accountability cohort so that we can get these books published. And when you look on our website, journeyhtx.org, you'll see lots of other events and conversations that are happening. And if there's something you think we need to talk about, let me know, and we'll add it to our programming. If you want to check out the rest of Journey, I'm happy to do a tour after this for whoever wants to get a little walk around. Across the way here is our dining room. We'll have some light bites and more conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
and
it.
Thank you very much to our panelists, to J19 it is, huh? J19, to Dr. Sharde, to Mr. Byron Canady. Talk to the people, visit the people, talk to one another, to our cameramen, our media men, people, right? Raise your hand in the house. Basil and Khalil and Sharif, we are grateful to have you here. And our board members who are here, yes, wave at the people, board members. Wave, that's right, getting the work done.